Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Martin is going to be teaching today on Jewish languages. He's not here yet, but hopefully he'll be here in just a moment. So should be shortly.
Was there homework last time?
Not for this one. That at least he didn't have any listed.
Okay.
This one was just to find ways to say, hi, my name is, that kind of thing in 3 different Jewish languages. That's all the homework for this time.
Is there any point where we will be told if we're keeping up or not keeping up? Because I've done so many of them from the YouTube that I don't know if I'm keeping up or not keeping up.
Yeah. I think if you only need to keep up literally if you want the certificate. Okay.
Right.
Well, and I think Martin and I need to figure that out because we haven't really had a good system of tracking who's sending in what and whatnot. So he and I will have to talk a little bit about how we want to handle that. My inclination is to say if for folks who've participated, I'm more in the side of not being too rigid about those kind of requirements if folks are participating, but I'll see what he says.
Yeah, I think Martin said he was going to be rigid, so I think it needs to be ironed out. It needs to be ironed out. I've tried to keep up even when I wasn't here, so.
Yeah. There's Martin. I'm unfortunately having to not stick around too long. I have another commitment this afternoon, so I'm really looking forward to listening to this in recorded form, but it's the way it goes sometimes.
Yeah, so do I. I'm actually sitting outside a theater waiting to go in, so. We have a Nina Simone production today.
Ooh. That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
Sorta. A little bit.
Kind of muffled. Is that the same for everyone?
Yes, it's the same for everyone.
It's a little muffled.
Okay.
It's low and muffled.
Talk again, Martin.
How does it sound now?
It's a little better, but
Martin, you might look at the bottom lower corner, left corner of Zoom and check. There's a setting where you can designate your microphone. It's possible maybe it's not pointing to the right microphone. Yeah, how is it now?
A little better.
Only a little bit better, or is it okay? Not really. It's pretty hard to hear, to be honest. Okay, what about now? There, that sounds better. Is it? Yeah, that's much better. Okay. Okay, I don't know what was going on. Yeah, it happens. I think a lot of people didn't know about the change.
Yeah, everybody who was here last time must have known about it, and I thought we discussed it the time before when you were running it, but maybe we didn't. I thought we decided because I think David was there, and we said, "Oh yeah, we'll change it." But
I remember seeing it
send
somewhere.
out something, so we're going to have to send out something to everybody to make this, to make sure everybody's on the same page. Send out a notice. We should have done that already, I think. But
Yeah, because Adam said he was told it was 6 BST.
yeah, did you talk to him so he'll still come?
Yeah, he knows.
Okay,
Well,
good.
isn't it 6 BST because it's 2 p.m. Eastern? What
No,
time is it?
It's 7. It's
7.
back to 5 hours.
Okay. We had it written down wrong on the calendar on the schedule then.
We have to fix that.
I don't
Yeah.
think I knew because I was on an hour ago, so I don't think I knew.
Oh.
But
Boy,
I
you're
just came
patient.
back.
You're very
I just
patient.
came back. I figured try it again.
I don't know. I know we had it at 2 last time, so people came. I mean, there were a lot of people there. So
Well, on the schedule it says 6 as well. It says 6 BST.
I don't
for
have
last
that
time.
schedule on my syllabus. That's weird. I have it from the past. No.
Well, if you scroll down to where it shows this class meeting, and again, it may be my fault. I may have got the time. I thought I had checked to make sure the time zones. I looked at a website to check to make sure time zones are correct, but I don't know what I did wrong there. But that may be on me because I remember thinking we had to fix that to get the times right, and I thought I did have it right, but.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, people are starting to come in, so that's good.
I put it on Facebook that it was not starting an hour ago.
Oh, good. Good idea. I didn't check that.
Yeah, last week I was on an hour early too, and then when I didn't see anybody, I just went away quietly. Went away quietly and did it on Zoom. I mean, did it on Facebook, on YouTube.
YouTube, yeah. Yeah, because it says 6 p.m. DST the last time.
I was just blaming it on me because I can't convert time, so I just do it on YouTube.
It's definitely not your fault.
No. I'm challenged. I just blame it on myself and catch the YouTube.
I guess we have to wait for some people to join, if they are or not, to see if people are joining.
I will say in the ham radio world, we pretty consistently use UTC time for everything just because it is a universal time. But I know that's hard for folks to convert, but that's in the radio world, there's just no way around it because people from all around the world are talking to each other. And how do you have your logs consistent and stuff?
What's UTC?
Universal. It's the same thing as Greenwich Mean Time.
Yeah, that's
but
what did they
stands for Universal Time. I forgot. It's what the scientific world and then some hobbies like ham radio use.
We added it at the invitation, but I wondered why it wasn't GMT. But I figured because
people are coming anyway.
British summertime changes. I didn't want to put in GMT and BST.
Yeah.
Are we at the right time then? We're at 2 o'clock our time?
Yes, I think we should send out an email to everyone. Just FYI, we made this change.
Easier for me because I had another thing that was from to 12:30 my time, and I could not have made it at 1.
Oh, good. I'm just glad you could come.
But if people want to stone anyone, it's David.
No, we did it for David asked, but we agreed.
That's because otherwise it would have been 3 a.m. for me instead of 4 a.m.
How you can do this at 4 a.m. I don't understand.
Yeah, how do you do it at 4 a.m.?
Yeah.
It's not Shavuot.
It's a lot of coffee.
Wow. I wonder if other people are joining.
They've been joining a little bit, but there's several of us putting them in, so I don't, I'm glad you put that on Facebook, though. I didn't check that, but of course, I already know the problem. So today I couldn't deliver something to a group that I'm working with because I couldn't find the thing that I'd amended because it was just right there on my homepage. I couldn't find, I thought I'd put it in a drive, I put it here, I put it there. No, it was just sitting there right on the homepage.
Okay, everyone. So welcome to our Humanistic Judaism 101 class on 28th of April 2024. Today's topic is Jewish languages. Please remember to stay on mute when not speaking, and to unmute and then mute yourself as needed. And if you could avoid using the chat facility whilst I'm talking, that I would be really grateful, because it kind of distracts me. And I also can't read what's being written, so while I'm sharing the screen. Okay, so I thought we'd start with, how many Jewish languages can we name? So go ahead and name some Jewish languages.
Yiddish and Ladino.
Okay, let's do one at a time. That's okay. Yiddish and Ladino, yeah.
Judeo-Telugu.
Judeo-Telugu. Yeah. Somebody put something in the chat. What was that?
That was just it's not, there are really Jewish languages. There are things that are based on Jewish languages. He said, Rebecca said Hebrew, Italian, Spanish, German. Well, certainly Hebrew.
Okay. So Jewish language is Hebrew, yeah? Any more?
Would Aramaic be one, which is not, it's not really in used anymore? Well, it is in some prayers.
We'll see, yeah.
Modern Judeo-Aramaic. I don't know if that's a language or a family of languages.
Yeah.
I think there's a Judeo-Greek or something like that.
Yavanic, yeah. Any others?
I think Judeo-Arabic, maybe.
Exactly, yeah.
Is
There's
there
a
are there
Judeo-French
any?
as well.
Sorry?
There's
I
a
said
Judeo-French as
Yemen.
well.
Yes, what's that called now? There's a word for that. Okay.
Are there any Jewish sign languages for deaf people?
Jewish Sign Language. Not. Let's put that in question.
I think
we can find
because
out.
of physical language, it may not be needed, because sign language is simply a physical representation that anybody speaking any language might be able to understand, but I'm not sure.
Well, there's Israeli Sign Language.
What about Esperanto?
So there is an there's Algerian Jewish Sign Language and Israeli Sign Language. So Esperanto is not a uniquely Jewish language, although it was invented by a Jewish person. So I think that's a good number there. Go on.
I believe there are a number of Jewish languages from the Caucasus region, some of them nearly extinct. I couldn't name one of them to save my life, though, unless there's something like Judeo-Georgian or Judeo-Aramaic. But even in the North Caucasus, I believe there are a number of them.
Yeah, it's called Tati, T-A-T-I.
No, you don't have any more boxes, but when I looked up French Jewish language, they said Zarfatic.
Zarfatic, yes, thank you.
Where do they speak Tati?
In the Caucasus.
No, whereabouts in the Caucasus?
Azerbaijan.
Right, thank you.
Okay, great. So there's a good amount there. So to begin with, Hebrew is obviously the most widespread. Can somebody let the host furore in, please? Thank you. So obviously, the earliest Hebrew writing was discovered at Khirbet Qiyafah from the 10th century BCE. The Israelite tribes established a kingdom in Canaan at the beginning of the first millennium BCE, which later split into the kingdom of Israel in the north and the kingdom of Judah in the south. Can somebody else read this for me?
The kingdom of Israel was destroyed by the Assyrians in 722 BCE, and the kingdom of Judah was conquered by the Babylonians in 586 BCE. Its higher classes exiled and the first temple destroyed. After the Persians made Judah a province and permitted Jewish exiles to return and rebuild the temple. Aramaic became the common language in the north of Israel, in Galilee and Samaria, though Hebrew remained in use in Judah with Aramaic influence.
Thank you. Okay. With the Roman conquest and destruction of the temple, 2,000 years of diaspora followed. Hebrew became a religious and literary language, followed by a Gentile language for extra community functions, and a Jewish language as an in-group vernacular. So there was triglossia. So there was Hebrew, the language that people spoke with everybody, Jews and non-Jews, and then an in-group language, which was only spoken by Jews. And that was the main situation for a long time in the Jewish community in the world. And can somebody else read this?
Biblical Hebrew after the Second Temple period evolved into Mishnaic Hebrew, which ceased being spoken and developed into a literary language around 200 CE. Hebrew remained in widespread use in the diaspora as a liturgical and literary language, forming a vast corpus of literature, which includes rabbinic, medieval, and modern literature.
Yeah. So Mishnaic Hebrew is also used for modern literature. Is that clear? It's not just, so Mishnaic Hebrew is not the Hebrew that is spoken in the state of Israel. Mishnaic Hebrew is another form of Hebrew. We also have Ashkenazic Hebrew, which is a written language, which was first documented in the 12th century CE in Central Europe, where Ashkenazi culture developed first. It spread to Eastern Europe with the migration of Jews and became the high register of Yiddish speakers. So high register means much like how we use Norman French in English. So we don't say, I'm going to eat, well, I would never say this, but I'm going to eat pig tonight, or we're going to eat a cow steak. We say pork and beef. We say excuse me or pardon me instead of sorry when we want to sound more polite. That when we want to sound more polite in English, we use more words coming from Norman French. That's called the high register. So so Ashkenazic Hebrew was the high register for Yiddish speakers. Ashkenazic Hebrew is still used productively in Hasidic communities, mainly in New York. So productively means that they still produce material in it. They still use it for communication strategies, and they produce literature, etc. So it's mainly used in Hasidic communities in New York, Montreal, London, and Antwerp. It's also it has been used not just to produce religious text, but also as a vehicle of contemporary text, including even COVID-19 transmission, kind of news, and Zoom schooling. So there are examples of Ashkenazic Hebrew, not Israeli Hebrew, being used to communicate things about the pandemic and to communicate things that you would use a high register for. And it doesn't sound like biblical Hebrew. I'm sorry, like Israeli Hebrew. Actually, a contemporary non-religious secular Israeli would have difficulty understanding it in the spoken form, not in the written form. So can somebody else read this?
Ashkenazic Hebrew phonology informs how all Hebrew words in Yiddish are pronounced, i.e. Lashon Kodesh, Israeli and Sephardic Hebrew, Lashon Kodesh, Amar, he said, Umer, Yochanan, Yochanan, HaKodesh, Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He. HaKudoi.
Yeah, sorry, there's a mistake there. It's HaKodesh, HaKudosh Burichi. HaKudosh Burichi, that's it, yeah. So in this song, there's an example of Ashkenazic Hebrew.
בכל מקום שעתו מויצאי כי דילוסוי של הקודש בוריחי ומרה ביוחנן שומעת מויצאי אנביסוניסוי של הקודש בוריחי.
So I've had to hear that many, many times before I can understand what he's saying. Umar Rabbi Yochanan. It's Amar Rabbi Yochanan. And then afterwards it says Shel HaKudosh Burichi, Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's very difficult to understand. And then we have Yinglish, which is a variety of English that uses Ashkenazic Hebrew expressions and phonology. Yinglish is the common form of Jewish English used in the UK, probably in communities in the United States as well. It is used in the United States, and it's exclusively Ashkenazic Hebrew. We don't use words that come from Sephardic pronunciation or modern Israeli. We may every now and then use some words like that, but in general, regardless of whether you're Sephardic or Ashkenazi, in the UK especially, this kind of vocabulary forms the English. So when people say, "I'll go to shul," it would be very rare to say, "I would go to synagogue." We say, "I go to shul." So I want to see who can translate all of this excerpt here, all of this phrase. So give you a minute to have a look at it. Anyone want to have a go?
We're just having a hard time translating words we use and don't know the English equivalent of, but we know what they mean. Like stop being a crummy guy and chatting in Yiddish about your family at the synagogue instead of praying. What a shame on you. Oi, which is
yeah.
Whatever.
Oi is yeah.
Always me. You're always complaining. Now here I'm falling down. We'll make such a Borges next time. I don't know Borges. It sounds like something I've heard, but I don't know. Be a man should be a good guy and not a neb, which is a bad guy, I guess. I don't know. Okay. And I don't know what's koyach. I've heard it, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah, well done. You got 80%, I think.
Yeah.
But what's a Borges?
Yeah, I think Adam knows. I think.
Oh, good.
No, I have no idea what a broigus is. Shkoyach means strength, as in sort of congratulations on your strength. I recognize your strength. More strength to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Also,
It's,
thank you.
Hmm.
It also means thank you.
yeah. It's related to koach, Hebrew for strength. It's
Yasher Koach. Yeah. And then broigus. Does anyone else know what broigus is? No? I can't see anyone, so I don't know if anyone's saying something. Okay. So loshening is gossiping, like lashon hara, like bad speech, which comes from Hebrew, loshen. Shmuk comes from Yiddish. Mishpocha is Ashkenazic Hebrew, which entered into Yiddish and comes from mishpacha, which means family. Shul is originally means school. That is the word for synagogue. Davening is to daven, to pray. Shonda, shame. Oi, everyone knows the word oi. Kvetch, yet to complain. Broigus is a big problem, trouble. Like an argument, a broigus. Mensch, we know, and neb is kind of like a nebbish person, like a creep. You say like a neb is very nebbish, is like creepy. And shkoyach. Yeah. Okay, cool. And this is an example of, so another word for this kind of Yinglish is also yeshivish. If anyone's ever heard of that word, yeshivish. It's like yeshivish Hasidim tend to use this a lot, this type of English. And this is an example of somebody just kind of messing about on their YouTube speaking like this, basically.
Like Mr. Beast.
We're here with
Avrami.
What type of Hasidus are you from?
Square.
My great-grandfather was adopted by the Ger Rebbe. I might not look it, but I'm a Chassid right here in my heart. We're going to do trivia on Shabbos. I'm going to ask you the first question. You get $2. What do we do on Mincha Shabbos, Shabbos day?
We land the Torah.
That is correct. You got $2 right there. Congratulations. What does Shabbos mean to you?
We have a dish every Friday night. It's very... the Hoyden, I don't know.
Awesome.
Awesome. Everybody comes. It's very emotional.
Come together as a community to bring on Shabbos together. Is it the highlight of your Shabbos? Your Shabbos. Yes. Moving on, you want to go to the $20 question?
Yeah.
What are the 3 things we have by Abdullah?
A salmon, a fire, and grape juice.
That is correct. $20. Congratulations.
Like Mr. Beast.
Ready to go up to $100?
Absolutely.
We specifically make hot food on Shabbos, and there's a reason.
So he said Hasidish instead of Hasidic, Hasidish. He said I'm a chassid instead of a hasid. He said mincha Shabbos, so the midday prayer on Shabbat. Also in general English we say Shabbos. He said lein the Torah. Does anyone know what lein is? The lane.
It's when they like there's like a kind of a melody that you sing it with when you read the Torah.
Exactly. So exactly. So you know when people say like Vehayu hadavarim ha'ele. That's laning. Yeah. And the Torah instead of the Torah, tish. Anyone know what a tish is? So a tish in German and in Yiddish means a table, but a tish is when you sit with the rabbi and learn together. That's called a tish. Rabbi Falik of what's it called? The Birmingham Temple in Detroit. He has a weekly tish. Jehoiben, he's awesome. A Farbrang, and he said besamen instead of besamin, besamen, which is interesting. So all of the pronunciation is very different from standard Hebrew, and it's including a bit of Yiddish and everything. Can someone read this for me?
The Jewish community in Ottoman Palestine in the 19th century began reviving Hebrew as a modernized vernacular, which the British Mandate later recognized as one of the three official languages alongside English and Arabic. Modern Israeli Hebrew became the dominant language of the Jewish community in Mandate Palestine and then co-official with Arabic in the State of Israel.
And somebody else wants to read this?
Diaspora Jewish languages had to compete with Hebrew, which was ideologically and numerically stronger in Israel and became rapidly endangered. This altered a 2,000-year history of a Jewish linguistic repertoire of 4 languages: Hebrew, the non-Jewish co-territorial language, an earlier Jewish variety, and a new Jewish language.
Immigration to Eretz Israel or Mandate Palestine or Ottoman Palestine induced a change in the way the Jewish population related to and used their repertoire. Arabic became the dominant co-territorial language, which had already been the case with the vast majority of Jews from Arabic-speaking countries, and Hebrew shifted from a sacred language, normally known as Lashon HaKodesh, to a vernacular mainly spearheaded in Jewish Palestinian agricultural communities. The earliest Jews who migrated to Ottoman Palestine were actually Sephardim, who spoke Ladino, Arabic, and Hakketiya. Hakketiya is one of the Jewish languages that we didn't mention, as well as Hebrew. During the late 19th century, Yiddish speakers arrived from Eastern Europe. Thus, Yiddish, Ladino, and Arabic have the oldest continuous use as Jewish languages in contemporary Israel. So Yiddish, Ladino, and Arabic, the top 3 oldest Jewish languages still in use in contemporary Israel. So now I'm going to look at, yep.
Can I ask you a question? Is Judeo-Arabic different from Arabic?
Yes.
Okay.
It is different, yeah. We're going to look at it afterwards, yeah.
Will we touch on Haketia later?
Sorry?
Will we touch on Haketia later?
Hakketiya, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, we will. Thanks. So Judeo-Spanish is actually not just one language. Judeo-Spanish is technically 2 languages. So here you see the map of the migrations, the emigrations of Jews after the expulsion and during the Inquisition. On the left-hand side, in the whatever that color is, the dark green, I suppose, you see the emigration following the expulsion from Portugal. So Jews moved into Portugal and then stayed there for a while, and then there were Jews already from Portugal, and they basically moved up to Northern Europe, Western Northern Europe, notably Amsterdam and London and Hamburg. So there's the oldest Sephardi communities, and actually the oldest Jewish community, continuously Jewish community in Britain is the Western Sephardi community that has that history. And then they do not speak, we do not speak Ladino as a heritage language, although we have some use of Judeo-Spanish in liturgy and in some songs and traditions. And then the other community is the community which you see in red. So the first community that left Al-Andalus or Spain moved into North Africa, and they speak Hakketiya, which is Western Judeo-Spanish. And then the other communities moved to Italy, where basically Ladino didn't form. They just, because it was too similar to Italian, so they just ended up speaking Italian or the local varieties, the local languages. And then the other community, which you see it says Judesmo, that's the Ottoman Empire. So those communities that went to the Ottoman Empire, they developed Judaismo, which we also know as Ladino. And some of those communities moved up into Hungary, Austria, and Krakow in Poland, but they integrated with the Ashkenazim. So Ladino is Judaismo, the Eastern Judeo-Spanish variety. And Ladino developed in the diaspora. It is not 15th century Spanish. It's a common myth. People think it's 15th century Spanish. And even people will continue to use that myth, and even speakers themselves will continue to describe it that way. Especially Spanish people will describe it that way, but it's not the case. It does, however, retain many features of 15th century Spanish, but it is also distinct from Hakitiya, which is spoken in North Africa. And this is an example of spoken Judaismo Ladino from Istanbul.
Pero tú fuiste una vez en España o en Sudamérica.
Sí, yo fui 2 veces me fui a la España.
¿Cómo te pasó a ti con el español allá?
Muy bueno me pasó. Yo el otro año estaba en la América. Seguro, a mí me dijo, ¿tú de dónde viniste? Me dijo, esta lengua de dónde la sabes. Yo le dije, vine aquí y en español, ¿cómo se dice? Kira, a recoger de las casas. Kira nasıl denir? Kira nasıl, İngilizcesi nasıldır kira?
Kira, rent.
Rent.
Kira.
Sí, le dije, vine a recoger, ya llevo 500 años que están aquí viviendo, las casas no sé quién están, mi gran papá las dejó todas, le dije al que estaba en el taxi, no me entendió en primero. ¿Cómo dije? Hay 500 años que no vi, ¿tú cuántos años tienes? Me dijo. Le dije, 500 años no nos enviaron de aquí, dijimos las casas. Yo vine de mi gran papá a tomar las kiras de aquí. Tengo muchas casas. Seguro la lengua que hablamos nosotros en España hoy, a nosotros ya nos están entendiendo, están muy fácil. Estamos viniendo como uno que vino de antes 200 años, como salió de la musée.
So some of the differences between Spanish and Ladino are especially in the pronunciation, the phonology. So on the left-hand side, you see the Spanish words. So that's gente, which in Ladino is gente, which means people. Mujer, which in Ladino is mujer. Dijo, dicho. Hacer or hacer, which is pronounced fazer in Ladino. Hizo or hizo. Hizo, hizo, not hizo or hizo. Quince or quince, quince. So it's very different. The pronunciation there is very, very different. And also Spanish doesn't have the F in many positions. It has a drop. It drops the F, and Ladino doesn't have that feature. So here are some more examples. Does anyone read? Is anybody good at Spanish? Does anybody know how to read Spanish?
I do.
Okay, do you want to read the Spanish examples one by one?
Yeah. Ayer mi mujer me dijo que hay que ir al médico porque estoy enfermo.
Which in Ladino is, ayer mi mujer me dijo que hay menester de ir al doctor de que estoy asino.
¿Dónde está tu abuela y de dónde me dijiste que venía? Yo le voy a comprar las naranjas que te pidió.
All right. Yes. So sorry, I forgot to translate. Yesterday, it's okay. Yesterday, my wife told me that I have to go to the doctor because I'm sick. And this one is, where is your grandmother? And from where did you tell me she came? I'm gonna buy her the oranges that she asked you for. So in Ladino, that's ¿Dónde está tu nonna? ¿Y dónde me dijiste que venía? Yo le va a mercar los portugales que te demandó.
No te necesito, tengo un padre que es un vendedor muy grande y él me las va a comprar.
I don't need you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I have a father that's a very big seller, and he's going to sell them to, or he's going to buy them for me.
Exactly. Nome primo a ti. Tengo un padre, mercado muy grande, y él me va a mercarlas.
Usted acompañará a su hijo a hacer el bar mitzvah en la sinagoga esta tarde. Will you go with your son to do the bar mitzvah in the synagogue this afternoon?
So, and that's in the polite form instead. Vos acompañarás a vuestro hijo a cumplir minyan en el cal esta tarde. So vos in every Spanish variety means nowadays means it's either not used or it's the informal you, especially in Argentina and in some places in Central America, Colombia, etc. But everywhere else in the Spanish world, it doesn't exist anymore. But in old texts from 5 centuries ago, they used it to refer in the formal. So it was replaced by usted. Whereas in Ladino, vos is the formal. It's the formal, which means the polite form of you. And then vuestro in Spanish means your, but referring to y'all, like the plural you. Somebody's written in the text, but I can't read it. Can somebody read it for me?
What are you asking to be read?
The chat, sorry.
I'm not seeing anything in the
I
chat.
don't see anything new.
Oh, I see it. I see a message, but I don't know. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so here is an example of a Ladino song from Turkey. And Ladino songs in the Balkans, so I have Balkan ancestry as well. Ladino songs are very secular, very everyday things, very, almost sexual and jokey, and not what a lot of people would expect. But it's very much the vernacular, colloquial language of Sephardim from the Balkans and Turkey. Okay, so now we'll move on to Haketia. So Haketia, or Western Judeo-Spanish, is spoken in northern Morocco and Melilla, with notable centers around Tangier, Fez, Tetuan, etc. It was developed in North Africa as a spoken variety, not a written language. And something to note there is that spoken Haketia and spoken Ladino are not entirely mutually intelligible due to the different influences on them. So Haketia has 47% Spanish lexicon, 34.5% Arabic, and 18.5% Hebrew, which renders it unintelligible to a Ladino speaker. However, the literary languages that they both share are the same. They don't have any of these loanwords. They don't have any Arabic, any Turkish, anything like that, but they draw on Hebrew and Spanish only. And they have the same type of, it's written in the Hebrew alphabet with using the same orthography, and it's intelligible. They can both understand it. Haketia is. Go on.
Ask a question.
Yeah.
Melilla, does that have a historical Jewish population? Because I had understood that to sort of have been a Spanish exclave, sort of nabbed for military purposes, and to have been thoroughly Spanish for centuries. And
yes,
I would have thought that, you know, there would have been a strong no Jews allowed policy, given that the Inquisition only ended in the 1800s.
Right. Yeah. But there are a lot of Jewish people in Melilla because it's near Tetuan and Fez. So there was an expulsion of Jews in the 1950s, and I know that a lot of people moved into Melilla, but there was an original community from there. So there was a coming and going between Melilla and Morocco, basically.
Were they crypto Jews historically?
No. No.
Oh, I'm quite surprised. Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay. So Haketia was slowly replaced by Spanish because the north of Morocco was a Spanish protectorate. It was colonized by Spain. And as I mentioned, Jews were expelled in the 1950s, and it ceased being passed down during the 20th century. There are courses being taught at the University of Haifa, the Oxford School of Jewish Languages, and it has undergone a revival in Venezuela. And there is a person called Alicia, I never get her name right, Alicia Cito Raz, who has a website and Voces de Haketia, and is also a frequent speaker on Encontros de Al-Had, which is a Judeo-Spanish YouTube channel. And this is her speaking for about a minute. See if anybody that can speak Spanish, see how it sounds to you and what you think of the difference.
Venido bueno, venido claro, Dios y Ladino, y más de todos, a los que se jasmearon para organizar el segundo coloquio de Dios y Ladino, que se va a cumplir en marzo 2013. Soy Alicia Cisorraz y hablo en Haketia, el dialecto judeo-español, principalmente del norte de Marruecos. El año pasado, Dios y Ladino organizó el primer coloquio del judeo español. Yo tuve el placer de dar la hadra de la Haketia. Rachel Amado Bortnik dio la hadra del judeo español oriental, el judaísmo, que se telfea hoy en día con ladino. Igual como fue el año pasado, también en el coloquio endiamantado de este año, se van a presentar programas en Haketia y en judaísmo. Profesor Jaime Vidal Safija, el jajam grande del judeo español, dijo que judaísmo y Haketia son las dos cabezas del mismo águila.
Right, so quickly to answer Adam's question, the first Jews from Tetuan arrived in Melilla in 1864, and the first rabbi arrived in 1867. and it actually became a haven for Jewish refugees from Nazi aggression, because they had a presence in Morocco. Okay.
Thank you.
That's okay. So we'll move on to Arabic. Would somebody like to read this?
Written Judeo-Arabic emerged in the 9th century CE, first as important religious literature. Jewish varieties of Arabic developed regional differences both from non-Jewish Arabic and from other Jewish Arabics.
The Moroccan Judeo-Arabic, for example, has sh in place of the Muslim s. So in Muslim Moroccan Arabic, they would say bislama, or goodbye, slama, but Jews say bishlama. And I grew up with a Moroccan family, and they say ashel khbark, for how are you, which is literally what is your news. And they say asl khabark, whereas Muslims say ashel khabark. So this is sh versus s, and also z in Judeo-Arabic of Morocco, in place of Muslim Arabic j. So, for example, tanzia, which is plate, is tangia among Muslims. The word tagine, for example. I think a lot of people are familiar with the word tagine, so this is related to that word. So that's one of the examples. There are lots of examples of that, but I don't have the time to give many of them. And I believe this video, yeah. So when I did my ethnography for my anthropology degree, which was on Jewish Arabic, Arab-Jewish identity, I recorded my friend's mother speaking on the phone with her permission, and she's from the Sahara Desert, Ghadaya, and I'm not going to detail much of what she's saying, but it's a very unique dialect. The Judeo-Arabic of Ghadaya, which is in central South Algeria, is actually quite distinct from other Judeo-Arabics, and it has some features that make it sound a little bit Tunisian or make it sound a little bit Egyptian at times. And also the surrounding non-Jews do not speak Arabic. Only the Jews that speak Arabic there. So Arabic is very much the Jewish language of that community. And she also says a couple of Hebrew loanwords as well, mishtara, which she pronounces as if it was Arabic, mishtara, and knesset, like instead of knesset. She has this kind of Arabic accent when she uses Hebrew words.
يعقوب ده في لندن ياك تو مشى ما عنده من زوجه خلاها هنا ومشى ما كانت عنده عام ومسوق ولحها مهبولة اللي يحمل روحه كل آخر يحمل اللي يحب ما تقدر تقول موالو اليوم كان داك راهم راهم في المشترى هكذاك وفي الكنيسات وفي المشترى وفي كل بلاصة.
Could somebody else read this?
Judeo-Arabic was the language of Maimonides, who wrote everything but the Mishnah Torah in it. During the Fatimid rule and later Norman rule of Jews wrote Arabic and Hebrew characters, as is usually the case with Judeo-Arabic. A famous tombstone in the Palace of the Normans, Palermo, is in Judeo-Arabic, Greek, Latin, and Arabic.
It's actually behind me. I don't know if you can see it. I actually have it on my own wall. And this is it. So it's in Latin, Greek, Arabic, and Judeo-Arabic. That looks like Hebrew at the top, but it's not. It's Judeo-Arabic. Would somebody else like to read this?
Judeo-Arabic is endangered, especially in Israel, where there was immense pressure to drop Arabic. Official policy in Israel is to teach Arabic at school, but classical Arabic is used rather than vernaculars. It was one of the largest Jewish languages, but it's now fading. Wikitongues supports speakers with maintenance and revitalization projects.
That's a bit of a shameless plug because I actually am part of Wikitongues myself. And this is an example of somebody from Wikitongues using Judeo-Iraqi Arabic.
مساء الخير، أنا اسمي بنيامين، عندي 34 سنة، عايش في إسرائيل في تل أبيب. أنا مولود في باريس فرنسا من من الجزائر وأب من مصر. أنا كمان أدمين على الفيسبوك من جروب Egyptian Jews يهود مصر. في ناس من كل الديانات في مصر في إسرائيل في فرنسا في العالم كله علشان نتكلم عن تاريخ يهود مصر ونفتكر على طول من اليهود اللي كانوا عايشين في البلد قبل ما سابوا البلد.
One of the things that's not obvious from what he's saying, unless you're a speaker of Arabic, is that he's speaking Iraqi Judeo-Arabic, and it sounds more classical than the average vernacular of Iraqi Arabic. It's definitely Iraqi Arabic, but it has more classical features. The reason being is that Jews spoke Arabic for a long time, and their Arabic was developing in a different way to Muslim Arabic or Christian Arabic. So there was a use of classical Arabic for a longer period of time than there was possibly for other local populations in the region.
May I offer I hope a relevant example of how the registers differ in Arabic culture?
Yeah. What's that?
I had an Arab. I said, may I give an illustrative example of how? Yeah, how the registers differ. I had a Saudi Arabian boyfriend, and I would ask him to read me poems, etc., in Arabic, and it would always be in classical Arabic. So just out of curiosity, I asked him to read me a poem in contemporary Arabic, and he refused because he considered it too déclassé, too common, too vulgar, and he was too embarrassed to even enunciate his own language in a literary context.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Jews in the Arab world did use classical Arabic and did use it to produce things, whereas the Muslim population did not use classical Arabic other than for literary purposes, other than for reading the Quran, for example, and the Hadith. So they used it for religious purposes, and the educated elites used it, whereas the entire Jewish community used it as their everyday kind of literary language. So it was more common for Jews to use classical Arabic, actually. So that attitude that still persists was not an attitude that Jewish Arabs had. So thanks for that example. And this is an example of three sisters from Israel whose family came from Yemen, and they're using Yemeni Judeo-Arabic.
وشعير وعنب وزيت وتين ورمان وتمر وبيت بلاد بر وشعير وعنب وزيت وتين ورمان وتمر وبيت بلاد بر وشعير وعنب وزيت وتين ورمان وتمر وبيت بلاد
So I just wanted to give an example, and it's quite a long song actually. But if you want to look it up, they're called AWA, which is spelled A-W-A. So there is also modern contemporary production of Sidurim in Arabic. A most recent example is Sidur Farhi, as well as a Chumash, the Torah, in book form. And inside it's got this Arabic calligraphy. It's very much producing this like Arabic aesthetic of a holy book. On the left is the Siddur, on the right is the Chumash, and you can see some examples. Well, you can't really properly see it, but there's some of the inside. It's just very classical Arabic. It's written in classical Arabic. So a lot of people think that classical Arabic is the Islamic language. This is not actually just the case. It's also used in the Coptic Church, in the Maronite Church, and among Jews. So the language that you find in the Quran is not unique to Islam. It's actually all three religions in the region. Probably also the Druze religion. And now we can move on to Yiddish. So Yiddish was once spoken from Alsace to the Urals, so that's basically from France to the middle of Russia. It is severely endangered since the 20th century, when it lost the majority of its speakers, mostly but not only through the Holocaust, on the eve of which there were 13 million speakers. And Yiddish literally means Jewish. Yid means Jew. Yiddish is Jewish. The opposite of that is Goy, non-Jew, and Goyish, which would mean non-Jewish language, and is also called Mama Loshen, or mother tongue. So Mama is using a Slavic loanword, and Loshen is a Hebrew loanword. It is spoken by Ashkenazim from Central and Eastern Europe, and its basic vocabulary and grammar are derived from medieval West German, and it integrates many loanwords from Hebrew, Aramaic, and various Slavic and Romance languages, including words from Italian. So the word to bless is bench, which comes from bendicare. And that's because Ashkenazim first entered Central Europe through Northern Italy, their ancestors having been brought to Italy by the Romans. And this is an example of spoken Yiddish.
Es ist gewinn a Chevre. Die Menschen, die haben gehört, ach, sie redet dort ein Mensch, man hört ein jüdisches Wort. Menschen sind gewinn bederklar freundlich. Menschen, die haben gekannt Jiddisch, haben gewollt mitschmissen. Ich denke, wir sind einmal gewinn in einer Bäckerei auf dem Lower East Side, wo wir dort gemacht haben, also eine ethnografische Forscharbeit mit Rachmilen. Ein älterer Jid hat gehört, wie man redet Jiddisch zwischen sich. Ist gewinn stark zufrieden, hat sich weggesetzt mit ihnen, genommen reden mit ihnen, so weiter. Ist also geschehen, das von Zeit zu Zeit ist das geschehen. Es ist nicht gewinn eine seltene Sache. Man steht auf der Gas mit der Freund, man redet auf Jiddisch. Menschen hören Jiddisch, sie reden mit uns. Dieselbe Menschen reden nicht in Sachen Jiddisch, sie sehr gewöhnt beim täglichen, ich weiß nicht, Geschäftstag. Aber wie nur man hört, dass ein Mensch redet Jiddisch, sind sie sehr offen, sehr freundlich, werden sie mitreden und sie mitschmissen. Verstehst du, sind auch gewinn Menschen, die haben gekickt auf ihn, also wenn wir sind Idioten, größer, ich weiß nicht, wie kann das sein, was macht man als Tararama im Jiddisch, was darf man reden Jiddisch, sicher ist es politisch oder ich weiß nicht, sie ist nicht auch umgehalten von dem.
And now we talk about Neo-Aramaic. But we do have a lot of languages, actually, Jewish languages. So sorry for it to be a little bit of a whistle-stop tour of the languages. I hope it's enough. You can always look up more about it, and if anything inspires you, to write about and talk about, you could do so in our Facebook group, etc. So Neo-Aramaic, which thank you, Adam actually mentioned. Adam, would you like to read this?
I love to ordinarily, but I still have a cold and my throat is
Okay,
very
that's
sore.
fine. Is somebody else?
Neo-Aramaic is a modern Jewish Aramaic language, often called Neo-Aramaic or Judeo-Aramaic, originally spoken in 3 villages near Accra in Iraqi Kurdistan. The native name of the language is Lishanid Janan, which means our language, and is similar to names used by other Jewish Neo-Aramaic dialects. The alphabet that we call Hebrew is actually the original Aramaic alphabet the Jews learned in the Babylonian exile.
And this is the region that it's traditionally spoken in. So the only surviving one is actually Lishan Janan, which I believe is Tranzab. Yep, and so basically there are these 4 regions. So a lot of Neo-Aramaic speakers will actually refer to themselves as Jewish Kurds or Kurdish Jews. And in many of them live in Israel, but not only. And they call themselves Kurdish, but they speak Aramaic. And Aramaic is the language of the Talmud. It's the language of the Kaddish. That anybody that has any religious families or anybody that would use the Kaddish frequently, you'd be using Aramaic every time you. So this is a continuation of that language, literally from Babylonia. This was what was Babylonia. And incidentally, that's one of the oldest Jewish communities. And this is an elderly speaker of Neo-Aramaic.
الدوق خطورة مخطورة دخات كاستيل أخا إيس النبيوة عسكر ضد إنجليزي الدوق إثوى مغدوها أفال عدل ويوا طورة رش طورة عدل ويوا أنا جزيوا مري لك يوم الشبثة يوم عند إذا جزيوا شكروا بناثا يسخي ورشطورة رخذيوا وبنوني بناثا ويماثا أخني دوق أخوانونياثا ويماثا نقم بشليوا ثيلي خوعدا قمري والله أوها طورة رابا بغاشيلي قيم غبانا 5 عدا خا شيخانا بانا.
Yeah, so I won't play the whole thing. It did actually have subtitles, but I don't know what's happened to them. She was telling quite a funny story eventually. But it sounds like it's in between Arabic and Hebrew somehow. And it is a Semitic language and of the same family as Hebrew and Arabic. So it does sound very much like it's of that family. So Judeo-Malayalam. Does anybody? I can imagine that Adam knows what this is, but somebody else other than Adam want to guess where this is spoken? And there's a bit of a trick because it's not where you would think it is based on the name. Anybody apart from Adam know? No? Okay, Adam, do you want to say where you think this is?
I could be wrong. I think it's from Kerala. But I previously mentioned Judeo-Telugu, which is Andhra.
Yeah.
I think I got it wrong. I think it was in the 12th century, Jewish merchants started to arrive in what's now Kerala, and it's the oldest Jewish community in India, older even than because you would think that because as it tends to happen, as the Muslims conquer Asia, they bring Jews with them, people of the book.
Yeah.
So you'd think it would be up there in the north, but it was actually Jewish merchants in the south of India I think that's right.
Yeah. So there are sort of three waves of immigration, of Jewish history in Kerala, which is South India,
Really?
Southwest India. Yeah. So because actually it's a legend in the region that the Apostle Thomas went to Kerala because the oldest Christian community is one of the oldest Christian communities in the world, and they have Aramaic as their liturgical language. And it's the St. Thomas Church, the St. Thomas Apostolic Church. And there is a belief that the oldest Jews, the oldest Jewish community was from that period, and that actually some of them just became Christian when Thomas came. So, and then on top of that, there was the 12th century. And then on top of that, there was the Paradesi community, which was Sephardim from Baghdad. Yeah.
I thought the Baghdadis settled in northern India rather than southern India.
No, Baghdadis settled in several places, but including in Kerala. They're called the Paradesi community.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah, because Paradesi means foreign. So yeah, the Baghdadi community is called the Paradesi community, and the original Jews are as native to South India as anyone else, basically. So Judeo-Malayalam or Yehudia-Malayalam is the only Dravidian Jewish language. So Telugu, there are Telugu speakers who are Jews, but they don't have a Jewish dialect. They just speak Telugu. So we can't call that Judeo-Telugu. Yeah. And yeah, as we said, it's spoken in Kerala. It shares features typical of other Jewish languages, like word-for-word verbatim translations from Hebrew to Malayalam and archaic features of Old Malayalam. And this is a picture. The guy second from the left is, we're going to see him speak in a minute. He's also part of Wikitongue's team. And yeah, they are local Jews from Kerala.
ഷലോം, എൻ്റെ പേര് തവൻ ദുബൈ യഹൂദി. ഞാൻ കൊച്ചങ്ങാടിക്ക് സമീപമുള്ള എറണാകുളത്ത് ഇപ്പോൾ വസിക്കുന്നു. ഞാനിപ്പോൾ സംസാരിക്കുന്നത് യഹൂദ മലയാളമാണ്, അഥവാ ജൂത മലയാളം. ഇതിനെ ഞങ്ങൾ ഹീബ്രുവിൽ മലയാളം യഹൂദീത് എന്നൊക്കെ വിളിക്കും. എന്താണ് ഇതിൻ്റെ വ്യത്യാസം? നിങ്ങളിപ്പോൾ ആലോചിക്കുന്നുണ്ടാവും, സാധാരണ മലയാളമായിട്ട് വലിയ വ്യത്യാസമൊന്നുമില്ലല്ലോ, അതേപോലെ തന്നെ ഇരിക്കുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ എന്ന്. അത് ശരിയാണ്, വലിയ വ്യത്യാസമൊന്നും ജൂത മലയാളത്തിനില്ല. ഇവിടെ ഇപ്പോൾ കേരളത്തിൽ അവശേഷിക്കുന്ന ജൂതന്മാരിൽ ശുദ്ധമായി ജൂത മലയാളം സംസാരിക്കുന്നതോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതിൽ പാണ്ഡിത്യമുള്ളവരായിട്ട് ആരും തന്നെ ഇല്ല. ഹിബ്രു യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി ഓഫ് ജെറൂസലേമിൽ ഇസ്രായേലിൽ നിങ്ങൾക്ക് ജൂത മലയാളം കേൾക്കാൻ സാധിക്കും. അവിടെ മലയാളം ഡിപ്പാർട്ട്മെന്റ് വരെയുണ്ട്, വലിയ ഗവേഷണങ്ങൾ നടത്തുന്ന.
Yeah, he mentioned that the Hebrew department of the University of Jerusalem has a project for Judeo-Malayalam because there are a lot of people from the region emigrated to Israel, and there is quite a lot of Malayalam speakers in Israel, actually. And then this is a woman who lives in Israel who is an Indian Jewish woman who's singing in Judeo-Malayalam.
ടോക്കെടുക്കാൻ നമ്മുടെ നാടിനെ, സ്വന്തം നാടിനെ, പൊന്നലിയ പ്രസന്നം വന്ന് പൊങ്ങി വരും നേരം ആമരത്തിലെത്തിയാങ്കൊടി പാടിടുന്നു നമ്മൾ, സുഖത്തെ വന്നേ ആലിയൊക്കായി ഡോക്ടർ വന്ന് സോഹനക്കായി അങ്ങ് പോവാൻ ഇസ്രായേലിൽ പോകാൻ. ടോക്കെടുക്കാൻ നമ്മുടെ നാടിനെ, സ്വന്തം നാടിനെ.
Okay, so that was our whistle-stop tour of some of the biggest Jewish languages, some of which I imagine some people didn't hear about before or had not heard examples of. So at this point, I would like us to talk together and answer this. Most Jewish languages are endangered today, apart from Hebrew. What do we think we can do as a community to promote the use of Jewish languages in our community? So I'm going to stop sharing and ask us to discuss that.
Maybe learn one of them that we don't know, if it's possible.
If it's possible.
Well, we started learning when the pandemic started, and they did it on Duolingo. We started learning Yiddish, and I think at this point I can read it pretty well, but I can't speak it at all, and I can't understand it being spoken particularly well. I've moved on to Hebrew, which I love how economical Hebrew is, but I can't hear it. When they say, what is this person saying? I can't distinguish an R from an L, from a this, from a that. It's really hard for me. But I guess over time, a couple of the words are starting to gel in me. So I can hear some words, but it's hard.
Auditory learning is my hardest, like, part of learning. I don't know why I still don't have my camera on. There you go. It's something the hardest part for me is auditory. So I would recommend, if you can find a book that you know really well in Hebrew, to listen to it. That's what I did with Spanish. And my listening still isn't fantastic in Spanish, but I listen. I'm of the generation that Harry Potter was incredibly important to me. And so I have all the Harry Potter books in Spanish. And because I know them so well, I don't have to focus the same way that I would listening to something that I didn't know. And so I can pick up so many more words than I would be able to with a book that I don't know, because I'd be trying to understand what was happening on top of trying to understand the words. So find something that you know well in Hebrew.
And long ago, I took in high school and college, I took French and Spanish. I can't hear French at all because all the endings drop away and I just can't. Spanish, I can hear because they complete the words. Pretty much tell the words.
Not a lot of them do not.
Compared to French, are you kidding?
No, French is definitely harder, but Spanish.
Although Betty Ann spoke French.
A lot of the dialects drop endings.
So sorry. So Hebrew is not one of the endangered Jewish languages.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So in our community, like, I believe that we already do some. So I obviously bring Jewish languages that I know about, which is Ladino, a little bit of Judeo-Arabic. I bring that to Spinoza Chabura. But what do we think that we should do as a community to help kind of promote the use of Jewish languages apart from Hebrew?
Go ahead, Adam.
I have an opinion which I imagine you may well want to lynch me after I finish speaking. But I think, okay, linguistically, once we know enough about the language, once we have its literature, once you know all that we can about it, and we can use that information to enrich linguistics and cognitive science. I think if a culture decides to abandon it, as long as there's no oppression, as long as there's no colonialism, I think sometimes that's just the way of things. I'd like to give an extreme example. I believe in Papua New Guinea, there are only 4 million people and over 900 languages. Yeah. And simply when it comes to communication, languages will die. And if nobody is oppressed, and the community, I'll give an even more extreme. I was thinking of an example, and it was quite a poor one, so I'll forget that. Yes, no, I think choice is the most important thing. If If nobody's compelling you, nobody's oppressing you, and I could imagine that in such a cosmopolitan state as Israel, then even if Israel was not so horribly Ashkenormative, eventually over generations, languages would naturally die. But I think if we preserve the knowledge, I mean, I can't speak Latin or ancient Greek, and they're both dead languages. I still have access to all the beauty and poetry of those languages. So I only think it's a problem if there's been compulsion. I hope you won't lynch me. That's just
I
my
won't, but I won't lynch you, but I will. I would like to perhaps correct slightly that Yiddish. That was a very diplomatic way of saying you're wrong. Yiddish. Yiddish. Well, you're not wrong, but you had you know, I agree with what you're saying, but in the case of Yiddish and Ladino, the Shoah was the main reason for the endangerment. The Judeo-Arabic is certainly Israel's Ashkenormative, and also this very European idea of one nation, one language. So we see that in France, Spain, Italy, America. You know, everyone should, you know, we are this nation, so we should speak this language. And also it's a form of colonialism and Orientalism, the way Israeli society looks down on speakers of Judeo-Arabic. I think that the other Jewish languages, Hakitiya, yeah, that's due to the pressure of Spanish. So there's in every kind of language, there's an example of some sort of linguistic ideology that is oppressing the use of the language. So I think that we should, as a pluralistic Jewish, especially humanistic, I believe it's a humanistic value to help support minority languages. I can't help but say that as a linguist. But, you know, what you were saying was not incorrect, but I think that the causes for endangerment are problematic.
Well, every single example you've given me, there's been compulsion.
Yes.
All I was saying is, if there's been no compulsion, if it's been a natural process, then I think the choice. But that obviously that doesn't apply if there's the Shoah and the Ashkenazization of Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking is that a place like New Guinea, which presumably there's no coercion, in the interest of just being able to communicate with one another, some of the languages are dying out for lack of popularity, let's say.
I meant that. I intended that too.
Yeah. And
I don't think that what you were saying was wrong, by the way.
I mean, it's just like English is being
if you did.
used to be French, which was the lingua franca, you know, the world, lingua franca. But now it's English. And it's just like, you know, in order to communicate with one another, we all have to be able to somewhere along the line speak a language that we can each understand. So some languages are going to dominate, let's say. But then from your point of view, Martin, you hate to lose something. Nobody wants to let anything go extinct or lose something. So the question is, it's almost, in other words, people who speak those languages, I think, should invite other people in. In other words, produce fun events where people talk the language, or whatever it is, do something to help keep the language alive, I guess. But it's
translated.
sort of, I don't know. I mean, obviously our historic language was Yiddish, and that's why we were interested in learning it. But there are contemporary people who speak Yiddish, although I probably couldn't understand them. The Hasidic communities speak Yiddish, so that one's not going to die out, presumably. Anyway.
Yeah. David, I think that you tried to jump in before, did we? Is that the case?
No.
No, you didn't. Do you want to say anything, or you or Laurie?
No, I don't think I have got anything that hasn't already been covered.
Okay.
I wanted to just share very quickly a short anecdote. I had lived in Israel for a year on a kibbutz right after college. My parents came for a month to visit me, and then we flew back home together to the United States. And I had not been aware my dad spoke any Yiddish until in Israel, he kind of opened up and kind of talked to various other, I guess, Ashkenazi Jews in Yiddish. He was kind of halting. He said Yiddish was kind of halting, but he was much more able to speak Yiddish than I thought. And I guess it would be the freedom of being in Israel, and he felt he could speak the Yiddish there, whereas in a regular life he couldn't. And I always remember that it's in Israel there were still Jews that spoke Yiddish, and one person even said they didn't realize he wasn't Israeli. It was American, didn't speak Hebrew. They said, "Don't speak Yiddish, speak Hebrew."
Yeah, that's another. I mean, we're saying that it's Ashkenormative, but actually, it was this idea of the new Israeli and leaving the Yiddishness behind. It's like, yes, it's Ashkenormative, but it's also this other thing on top of that. Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Wasn't Hebrew revived? Wasn't Hebrew kind of an endangered language, and then they wanted to revive Israel?
It wasn't it wasn't an endangered language. It wasn't a spoken language.
Spoken language
for almost 2,000 years. So this Ashkenazic Hebrew that I mentioned is just one example of Hebrew being used throughout the time in the diaspora to produce materials in Mishnaic. It was basically Mishnaic, Rabbinic, Mishnaic, and later Hebrew. But it's a very rare example of a language that has been maintained for so long only as a literary language and actually not endangered in that sense, but not spoken as a vernacular, and hadn't been spoken as a vernacular for a long time. And
how close to spoken? Go finish. You finish.
How close to spoken modern Israeli Hebrew is it?
To the literary language.
Yeah, so modern Israeli Hebrew and Mishnaic Hebrew are quite far apart. The syntax of modern Israeli Hebrew is actually based on Yiddish. There are sometimes, so you say like, Vayomer Adonai Moshe Lemor. So this is like a very, like the Parsha for Pesach. It was, and he said, Adonai, Moshe Lemor, to tell to Moshe. But that structure, that syntax is not modern Israeli Hebrew at all. It would be like the Adonai, whatever, like the Adonai Amar LeMoshe Lemor, like this. It's like completely the other way around. Lots and lots and lots of there are lots of examples of that. So for example, when you say Gan Eden in modern Israeli Hebrew, that's kindergarten, not Gan Eden. Gan Eden is Garden of Eden. Sorry, Gan Yeladim, which is garden of children, and that means nursery school or in modern Israeli Hebrew, which is clear. It's very clear where that comes from. Kindergarten. So they literally, it's called a calque. They copy the structure of Yiddish and put Hebrew words onto it.
Gan Yeladim. It's
Gan, yes.
It's garden, and then you have what type of garden it is. That's very Hebrew. That wouldn't be the same in Yiddish, I don't think, would it?
No, Yiddish is Kindergarten.
Right. They don't put every qualifier after the noun the way they do in
No. Yeah, but it's still a calque because the grammar of Hebrew it works the other way around. The adjective comes after, whereas it's the other way around, or however it is. So it's still copying the term. It's saying children garden instead of, it's saying garden of children instead of children garden.
Right.
But but regardless, that's not Mishnaic Hebrew or biblical Hebrew. You would not find that in the Torah, for example. And there are just so many examples of that being the case. But it doesn't mean that modern Israeli Hebrew is not Hebrew. It's a form of Hebrew. It's just very, very different from Mishnaic and biblical Hebrew. And it makes sense because the people that revitalized it were Ashkenazim who spoke Yiddish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what was I going to say about that? Yeah, there's a linguist called Gilad Zuckerman, who actually doesn't call it, I'm writing his name, Gilad Zuckerman. He actually doesn't call modern Israeli Hebrew. He calls it modern Israeli. So he actually makes this distinction and says it's a completely different language actually. It's just got the words are all mainly, not only, but mainly from Hebrew, but it's sort of as if you copy and paste all of the words onto another language, which is also a natural phenomenon in many mixed language settings. But yeah.
This has nothing to do with Jewish languages, but when we were in a nursing home situation, we realized that Mandarin and what's the other one, the more southern
classical Chinese.
Pardon? Adam?
I was going to say classical is, but then in Chinese it's about a dozen different languages. It's not.
Well, there's two main ones. One is Mandarin.
Cantonese.
Pardon?
Is it Cantonese?
Maybe.
There are many.
But at any rate, there are people in this nursing home who could not speak to this man who had mild dementia. But they said, because he spoke the other one, they said, we speak Mandarin, he speaks, maybe it was Cantonese. But if I write him a note, he'll be able to read it. So the written languages are exactly the same. They're just spoken completely differently. I was astounded by that.
Yeah, that was fascinating.
That's been the case for thousands of years in Chinese.
Yeah.
When educated people had to travel through the provinces, they could never speak to each other, but they would write, and they would be intelligible.
Well, that's like when we were in backwoods in North Carolina.
Oh yes, we were in North Carolina, and we went to the supermarket. We wanted to get Betty Ann's father some grits. We went right over the line from, it was in southern North Carolina, wherever it was. It was like on the line of North Carolina, South Carolina. We could not understand that person speaking at all. We didn't no idea what he was speaking. He was speaking some southern dialect, but it was completely unintelligible to us.
No, but I had the feeling that if you wrote it,
oh yeah,
he would understand.
That's right. If we wrote it down, we'd be able to communicate.
But it just struck me that was an example. It was incredible. We just went up to ask him. He worked there, to ask him for help, and it was completely incomprehensible. I mean, we knew it was some kind of Southern, but I'd been in the South many times, and this wasn't anything like anything I'd heard before. That was just interesting. The language is wonderful and fascinating. Yeah.
So language is a key component of identity, and part of the early Zionist desire was for Jews to have one shared language. So there is Judas. I don't know if anyone's heard of Judas. Jewdas is it's like a non-Zionist form of a Jewish group, and their founder actually said that Zionism is initially the desire of Jews to have solidarity and to look after each other, etc., and that there is still within Zionism this kind of idea, and it's not just the political Israeli state movement. one of the ways that Jews could be quote unquote Zionist in that sense, or to have solidarity with other Jews, was to have a shared language. And I thought we might discuss what the benefits of a shared language would be for us as Jews for identity building and solidarity purposes. Perhaps a clumsy use of the term Zionism there, or unnecessary use of the term Zionism. You could just call it Jewish solidarity. So what do people think of that idea?
I think there already is a prayer language in prayer Hebrew that is shared by all Jews.
Yes, there is.
Well, what is that?
By religious Jews, yeah.
Just by religious Jews.
Yeah, the part that
yes.
she never got any of, and I got little of it. Little.
But of course, we do still use that form of Hebrew in our community. So, and humanistic Jews still do use it, not just at Spinoza, however.
Martin, I think I misunderstood you. Was the organization called Judas?
Judas, yeah.
As in JEWDAS?
Yeah.
Oh no, I am a member of that. Sorry, I thought I misheard you.
You are.
What do they say about Jewish languages?
They don't say about Jewish languages. They talk about Zion, like a different form of Zionism, which is actually about Jewish solidarity in the diaspora.
Yes, the diasporist. Yes, that's
diasporist.
That's why.
Yeah, and their founder has an essay on the real meaning of Zionism and the original meaning, and how we can kind of reclaim that idea and take it off the kind of nationalism, take it out of the hands of nationalists, and say if it was truly about Jewish solidarity, then there are things that the Jewish community can do to express solidarity. One of which can be for us to have a shared language, which would probably be Hebrew. And I actually kind of am a bit biased because I quite like that idea, but I also think that we have to protect Jewish languages in general, which is why I always use Ladino as well as Hebrew in my services and in my material. But I think there's two things going on. There's the need to not let Hebrew dominate diaspora languages, but also why not also have Hebrew as a shared language?
What is Judaism?
Well, say that.
Well, I don't know. It just gets in my head to what is Judaism? Is Judaism? It's many things. Is it a religion? You know, people. I have this conversation so often with so many people. Is it an ethnicity? Is it a what? Everybody I know is brought up differently, being taught different things as to what it is. People who are Jewish, people who aren't Jewish, also have different concepts. And that sort of fits in when you say the universal language is religious Judaism.
What was that?
What was that?
What was that you showed? Haggadah?
No, I didn't want to take away from what you were saying.
Oh, Judas Haggadah. Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
It uses Yiddish and alongside everything else. But sorry.
No, there's nothing else. Just the things that fly through my mind.
This aspiration would be good for you from your point of view, because it wouldn't matter what your religious values was, what your upbringing was, whatever. It's just a shared something.
Yeah, no,
although we all share being Jewish.
I was very
that's,
happy to start learning Hebrew. I mean, when Paula started teaching,
Yiddish?
No, Hebrew. When I started learning the prayers at Hanukkah.
Oh, right.
And you taught me the Shema. I had no idea
that was
what
it.
the Shema was.
I asked some guy who was from England who didn't have a Jewish name at all, and he was saying some kind of a joke, and I said, "You can't tell that joke unless you're Jewish." He said, "I am Jewish." I said, "Really?" And I said, "Prove it." So I asked him to say the Shema, and he could. And I told this story to Betty Ann. She said, if you'd asked me, I couldn't say the Shema, so I could prove I was Jewish at that standard.
Yeah, I mean, I had family that knew the Shema, but nobody wanted to teach me. No, they weren't continuing that.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I think that in most like JCCs and including in England, although we don't technically tend to use that term, but Jewish community centers, and in synagogue communities, we do tend to grow up learning some Hebrew. And for many people, it's just so that you can do your bar mitzvah. But for a lot of people, you know, a lot of people go to Hebrew classes, and for some people, they do have this idea that it's the important Jewish language. I don't think it should be more important than other diaspora languages, but I do see a value in having a language as a people, because, like you said, are we a religion? Are we? We're all these things. We're a culture, you know, as well, and it's the plurality of cultures within Judaism. But why not? You know, why not as part of what our community does? Why not include kind of promoting our diaspora languages as well as using Hebrew and having a Hebrew name and things like this?
When I got used to saying things like Baruch atah Adonai, you know.
Yeah.
And
that you don't want to
but
say.
I like the sound. I'm very into languages. I was when I was young.
I will say the lesson, which because of the Holocaust made it difficult, but the lesson I think is our parents didn't teach us Yiddish, and maybe because of the Holocaust or because of whatever. And but if people teach their children and their children are interested in learning, which is
you never know.
You never know. That's the best way, on one hand, to maintain the languages. If we make sure our children know them, I encourage people to have their children
to
learn.
Teach it, to continue to teach
to continue
them.
to,
I don't know what you do.
Yeah. Laurie or Katie or David, do you want to jump in?
No, I'm just kind of listening. It's been a long day.
I mean, I agree. I think family is a very important part of that. I know my grandparents didn't teach my mom, but they used Yiddish. They spoke to each other in Yiddish. And so my mom, who's incredibly talented with languages, picked up on it. And so she still, no, I mean, she speaks so many languages. It's insane. But Yiddish is one of them that she doesn't speak it fluently, but she knows a lot of it. And it's because her parents used it, but it's also in spite of it, because they didn't want her to learn it necessarily. And so I think if they had actually taught it to her, she would obviously know even more now. She tried, but then also, like, I didn't really care that much when I was a kid, and now I'm trying to learn Spanish and stuff that I should have done as a kid that would have been way easier, but I just wasn't as interested. I did actually go through a phase of like really wanting to learn Hebrew when I was a kid. So I did, like, I knew the alphabet and I could read it. I didn't know what most of it said, but I could read it. Like, I could read an entire page of Hebrew, but I knew every like fifth word.
My mother could speak Hebrew, but she could not read it. We brought home some baseball caps.
Yiddish.
Yiddish. My mother could speak Yiddish and understand Yiddish, but she could not read it. And we found that out when we went to get some baseball caps with, you know, Yankees and Hebrew, and they looked at it and said, "What's that?"
Yeah,
she had
and
no
my
idea.
mother too, who had been was quite fluent in Yiddish. She didn't speak it. I mean, she was very American, but the same thing in the family, it had been spoken. And she used to tell me stories, and I loved it when I was very little. She used to tell stories in Yiddish, and I would ask her for them. But when I showed her, when we got these caps for my father, a cap for my father for his birthday or something, she just looked and said, "Okay,
what's that?
What does that say?"
That's so funny.
I was absolutely stunned.
Yeah,
you know,
I was
here
stunned
she was
too.
fluent, but she just hadn't.
And I guess also perhaps if they were more religious, they could have read it.
That's I was going to say.
But they weren't religious, so they couldn't read the Hebrew.
Yeah.
Well, that's my mom did go to synagogue, so she probably she could hear the Yiddish, and then she also knew the written Hebrew, so that probably helped her a lot.
Yeah.
I know. So I studied Spanish in school, it was basically Mexican Spanish because I was in California and I know some Hebrew from when I lived in Israel. And I'm just thinking that maybe a good language for me to learn might be Ladino because that would kind of combine
I
the
can
two.
understand most of Ladino. Like I can read Ladino, even though it's spelled differently. I can read and understand most of it because it's so similar.
Too, from my Spanish that I did.
The Ladino reminded me of when I lived in the south of France. And it's what struck me when I was there was how that was not the Parisian French. I had to read, you know, that I
It was
spoke
Italian French, yeah.
Parisian French, and it was much more Italian. But when I listened to the Ladino today that you put, I saw to me, I was seeing, because I'm really very oriented towards French, the French in it, you know, how it sounded so much like what I heard in the south of France.
Which is Italian French.
Which was
Italian influenced French, yeah. Where they pronounce the whole word.
At the time I was there, I thought to me it sounded, it was Italian, but I'd also been studying Italian then too.
So it sounds like Yiddish and Ladino are the top two contenders for our community to promote. I don't know Yiddish, but I can easily source things in Yiddish. But perhaps other people would like to bring stuff with them.
I was going to say it's what would be expected demographically.
Yeah.
Yiddish.
No, Yiddish and Ladino, simply because they're other big. I think you may have missed out one or two Caucasian Jewish languages. I think there's something called Judeo-Tat.
Yeah, Tati, I said.
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
Oh, is that the Azerbaijani?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, forgive me.
Where are those from?
I didn't present them, but we mentioned them at the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about a culture voluntarily abandoning its language? I appreciate that's rare because there's so much colonialism, but I think sometimes a culture does just decide we're going to assimilate and our language is going to die. Or do you not think that ever happens? Do you think that will only ever happen under duress?
That's sort of happened with Yiddish in this country.
No, that's also not. That's the pressure, cultural pressure, assimilationist pressure.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't think that people got off the boat and said, "Let's not talk Yiddish." I think it was they wanted to be American. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of Yiddish in particular, and I was just thinking of essentially very small languages where there's less than 100 speakers, and then you know they become linked by technology, by trade, and then it's like Papua New Guinea, like Tok Pisin. So I'm wondering, sometimes maybe are there not cases where the language doesn't die because of compulsion, it just dies because of cultural adaptation?
I think this is an argument that endangered language linguists debate, but the general consensus is that there is usually always some form of pressure. If a language has got to the point where there are only 10 speakers, it would say, why are there only 10 speakers? It could be a combination of marginalization, poverty, globalism. I mean, globalism is a pressure as well. It's not a benign force. Globalism can actually exert a lot of pressure on languages.
You're preaching to the
No, I know. It's just, well, you asked the question. So. Yeah. So yeah, like I think that I'm racking my brain for examples of a language that might be the case with, and I don't think that I can find any.
I'm thinking of cultures where there have never been more than 100 members. I mean, very, very small societies that have been isolated for a long time, and now they have trade. Now there's an incentive to Tocqueville in the English, the French. Even on a practical basis, I think, well, in the long term, isn't the language going to die?
Sure.
So if you live in a valley of 60, and your people, there's 60 of them, and the people in the other valley speak a different language, and the people in the other valley speak a different language, and then you become all connected by trade. That's not colonialism. That's not repression.
Then another language form.
Well, Tocqueville
is an example of this. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm thinking if there's no compulsion, would not that be the natural progression? And also
yeah,
wouldn't
that would, yeah.
Yeah. So my idea was that it's 99% of the time is because of oppression, but sometimes maybe it could be by choice.
I think the opposite is true. I think oppression probably kept languages like Yiddish going, because if people were allowed to assimilate more, they might have simply assimilated. And biblical Hebrew, or whatever you're calling it, would survive, but perhaps not the vernacular languages, because people wouldn't be forced to associate. They might just move apart or not. Although they would, by religion, so there would be some still cohesion, but maybe not linguistically.
The shtetl cultures in the Pale settlement actually helped preserve or maintain and develop Yiddish.
Yeah.
And there is this saying, it's the rural conserves and the urban destroys, or something like this. And I think that in that case, it's like isolation conserves. But it's not always the case, because normally when communities are, so for example, Judeo-Italian varieties, they're different and distinct from the non-Jewish varieties around them. And in Rome, you've got the Roman ghetto, which has Judeo-Romanesco, which is the Romanesco language as spoken, the vernacular of the Rome region, and it has features that are more southern Italian than Romanesco, and also Hebrew and Aramaic features, and they're in the middle of a city, but it was developed and maintained because of living in a ghetto.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, the oppression actually helped to maintain the language.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but in the majority of cases, it's not actually. It doesn't actually result in the continued existence of a language.
That's one
of a minoritized language.
That's one of the unique things about Jews. They've constantly been considered separate. No matter where they ended up going, they were either chosen or forced to be separate.
Yeah.
It's sort of a unique situation, probably in all the world, I think.
Oh, the Roma.
Yeah.
Roma, yeah. Yeah.
Roma.
Yeah.
They were always déclassés.
Yeah.
I'd like to show you something. Just give me a moment.
While Adam's doing that, I would say that perhaps what I put in the chat, the questions that we dance around a little bit, we could perhaps use them as like a one-page essay.
I'm
You could
back.
write your opinions on it. Yeah. You show us in one sec. But I was just saying, could perhaps use that as the task for this session, for after this session, is to kind of write on your feelings about Jewish languages. What you know, are there benefits of having a shared language among all Jews for identity, and what do you feel that we can do to promote the use of Jewish languages? And go ahead, Adam.
Yes, I've shared it to you before. I can't find it now. You were talking about how the relationship between the preservation of culture and oppression, and a very good example is the Jews of China. So for centuries, Jews lived in China, and they assimilated because nobody was killing us.
Yeah.
Yes. Now I happen to become friends with a Chinese chap from Kaifeng, and that was the last recognizable Jewish community in China. It sort of hobbled on till the 1850s, and he gave me this beautiful scroll, which I have somewhere buried in my drawers, which I try to look for. I can't find it now. But it had a very dramatic impact on Jewish thought, because it was an example of a place where we lived for a very long time when nobody was killing us. And the effect was assimilation. So there were Jewish communities all over China historically, but because they weren't killing us, we sort of became Sinicized. We blended into the general culture. And come 1850, there was still a synagogue in China, but they couldn't read the Hebrew. And they almost become indistinguishable from the Muslims. So yeah, I thought I'd give that as a
It's a really good example. I also just want to quickly show this, which I should have included and I forgot. It's a Yiddish song. It says, "Arise, ye workers, from your slumbers, arise, ye prisoners of want, for reason in revolt now thunders, and at last ends the age of cant. Away with all your superstitions, servile masses, arise, arise, we'll change henceforth the old tradition and spurn the dust to win the prize." This is from the Yiddish Bund in Russia. So, comrades, come rally, and the last fight let us face. The Internationale unites the human race. No more deluded by reaction, on tyrants only will make war. The soldiers too will take strike action, they'll break ranks and fight no more. And if those cannibals keep trying to sacrifice us to their pride, they soon shall hear the bullets flying. We'll shoot the generals on our side. No savior from on high delivers, no faith here, no faith have we in prince or peer. Our own right hand the chains must shiver, chains of hatred, greed and fear. Ere the thieves will out with their booty and give to all a happier lot. Each at the forge must do their duty and will strike while the iron is hot. And then it's in Yiddish. So that was the translation of the Yiddish.
Isn't that the Marxist anthem or something like that?
I'm not sure because I got it from the Judas Haggadah, but it could be. I know that the Yiddish Bund had a lot to do with that. So.
It is. There's the worst singer in the world is a man called Billy Bragg, and he sings this. He sings lots of social anthems. Yes. I think it should be classed as outside of music. But if you're perverse enough and curious enough, then Google Billy Bragg, the Internationale.
Okay. Outside of music's okay every now and then.
The American national anthem is pretty awful as far as the song. It was the Star Spangled Banner was once a drinking song. And I guess you could sing it if you were drunk enough.
But anyway, I showed it because it's an example of Yiddish. So
I heard that the Star Spangled Banner wasn't adopted until the early 1800s.
I'm going to close the. I'm going to stop the recording now because we have come to the official end. But I'm happy to continue talking.
This